Good afternoon and welcome to the Sustainable Materials Management webinar series, a joint effort between the National Recycling Coalition and the Pennsylvania Recycling Market Center. My name is Wayne Bowen and I'm the Program Manager for the Market Center, and I will serve as your moderator today. We would like to extend a special thanks to Bob Hollis of the Mobius Network for providing the webinar management software for this series, and Lisa Ruggiero of the National Recycling Coalition for providing technical support. Today's webinar focuses on zero waste programs for corporations, environmental claims, and verification. Following the presentation, we will conduct a question and answer session. If you have a question or comment, please use the GoToWebinar dialog box located in the control panel on your screen. You may also use the dialog box to request assistance if you are experiencing technical difficulties during the webinar. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be made available for viewing on the National Recycling Coalition and Recycling Market Center websites via YouTube links. And now I'd like to introduce our presenter, Tad Brzezinski. Tad has over 30 years of diversified experience and provides sustainable manufacturing, building, and operations, green marketing and training, and education consulting services. Tad is recognized as a leader in the industry and teaches and speaks extensively on sustainable development and sustainable manufacturing. Tad served as the Waste Minimization Program National Expert for the Environmental Protection Agency from 1997 to 2007. He received numerous awards from the EPA, including 2 National Notable Achievement Awards and a Superior Service Medal for outstanding collaboration with industry, which reduced 100 million pounds of waste and saved 1.6 billion gallons of water and saved the industry $42 million. He integrated EPA reinvention programs, also known as Project XL, Common Sense Initiative, and Sustainable Development, into the Waste Management Program. Tad serves as an adjunct professor at Villanova University, where he developed and is teaching graduate classes in principles of sustainable development, sustainable manufacturing, and eco-design, and advanced life cycle assessment. He assisted Villanova with developing a Master of Science degree in Sustainable Engineering. In addition, Tad is an instructor at Villanova for the IFMA Sustainability Facility Professional Course, which is an assessment-based certificate program delivering a specialty credential in sustainability. Tad has a BS in Mechanical Engineering from Drexel and an MS in Water Resources and Environmental Engineering from Villanova. He is a registered professional engineer in the state of Pennsylvania, a LEED accredited professional, a certified sustainability facility professional, and is trained as an ISO 14001 LEED auditor. Tad is an active member of the American Society of Mechanical Engineers, American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning Engineers, and the U.S. Green Building Council. And it's my pleasure to hand over the program to Tad.
Thank you, Wayne. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today. I do want to thank the PA Recycling Market Center and the National Recycling Coalition for the opportunity to speak today. This is definitely an area that's really important to me and something that I've been involved with for many years. As Wayne mentioned in the introduction, I did work for the Environmental Protection Agency for 10 years. And in that role as the Waste Minimization National Expert, I worked with many different manufacturing facilities over those years to help them figure out ways to reduce their generation of waste and to improve their operations. During my time period there, it was basically a time where we took a hard look at the waste management hierarchy, and we basically determined that there was definitely more of a need to focus on opportunities to recover energy out of waste as much as possible, and a lot of activity occurred during that time period. Also, while I was there, I did a lot of work with e-waste. Back in the day, e-waste was becoming a big problem, and there wasn't many regulations or much direction on how to manage that material. So at the time, we were really focused on what could be done with e-waste, and we're actually working with the manufacturers like Dell and different folks like that to figure out more closed loop or circular economy type of designs that they could implement. Wayne also mentioned that I'm a professor. I do teach at Villanova right now, but the first class I ever taught was in 1998 at Temple University, where I taught classes on solid and hazardous waste management. So today I'm looking forward to talking to you about zero waste strategies for corporations. Is zero waste possible? We all know there's a proliferation of landfill-free claims in the market today. And the question I always ask when I see those claims is, are these companies really achieving zero waste to landfill in a legitimate manner? If we think about it, as I go through today, I really want to talk about our current system of waste management in North America and some of the considerations for companies and different organizations to think about as they strive to become landfill free or, basically achieve zero waste to landfill. So I'll definitely be going through that as I talk today, and we will be taking questions at the end. And I'm expecting we've got a lot of people on the webinar here today, so I'm expecting there will be some questions because this is an area that's not really well defined, and there is a lot of activity in the market right now. So I just am basically showing a slide now of all the different companies that we've been able to identify, and this is just a very short list of companies that are claiming to have landfill-free facilities. Subaru is probably the most prominent. If you all recall, over the years we've been seeing Subaru commercials on television talking about how they've basically have land-free manufacturing facilities. And coming from the world of working at EPA as well as working in industry now for over 30 years, I know that going landfill-free is not really easy. I mean, it's a very complex process to deal with. There's many, many different materials that have to be managed based on the type of manufacturing facility or, any organization. And it's you kind of wonder, are these claims accurate? Are they true? And a number of others have come out recently. Procter & Gamble recently announced that they've got 45 facilities that are landfill-free. Unilever just announced that all their North American facilities are landfill-free. Even the Philadelphia Eagles now are claiming that, and they've done a lot of work not only to reduce waste in their, in the venue of football games, but they've also done a really good job of educating a lot of different folks about waste and recycling and just general sustainability. So really good stuff happening in the world, and it is exciting for me to see that these organizations are making claims like this. I'm sure there's a lot of people on this call that are really well versed in waste. I saw that there were a lot of people signed up from different government agencies. There was a lot of sustainability and waste management professionals on the phone. And, you have to realize that the list that I show here is not a comprehensive list. And if we were to draw a box and we look at total material flows in and out of any organization, these are some of the materials you're going to typically see coming out as waste. We all know solid municipal waste, the trash that we all drag down to the end of our streets each week when we put our trash out. We're pretty familiar with that, the different components of that. But we also have to remember that there's also electronic waste, construction and demolition waste, packaging, organics, and that could be everything from food to landscaping and biomass, lunchroom waste. Depending on the organization, it could be a large cafeteria or even a grocery store that just generates a tremendous amount of organic material. And then recyclables are all pretty straightforward: paper, plastics, cardboard. We do know that we are really limited by our recycling infrastructure as well as our waste management infrastructure within the United States and North America on how we can handle certain materials. And also, economics are going to drive the value of materials and how much they're recycled. One thing we also have to consider is hazardous materials and hazardous waste. Having come from EPA, I know that many materials and waste are heavily regulated. Pharmaceutical waste is another thing we have to consider. Also, biomedical. There are requirements for different types of waste on how they're managed and whatnot, and it makes it a challenge when a company is basically making a claim of being landfill-free or zero waste to landfill. And when I think about waste, it's really not waste to me. It's all about materials management. It's really important for facilities to understand all the material flows in and out of a facility and what materials are ending up as waste. And I'm a firm believer in the fact that all facilities, organizations, manufacturers, hospitals, grocery stores, whatever we're talking about here, really need to actively work to reduce the waste at the source, eliminate the production of waste entirely, and then determine the least impactful methods to manage those materials. Whenever we look at materials flowing in or out of an organization, we really try to understand, number one, can you eliminate the generation of this in the first place? And then what can you do to improve the operation and manage these materials in the most beneficial manner? So the question that I typically ask is when I see these various companies and organizations making landfill or zero waste claims, what are the market drivers for them, and why are they even doing this? And what we're finding is that many of the companies that make these claims are doing this because it's part of their sustainability program. Some are doing it for cost savings. I would say the majority of manufacturers are really focused on it for cost savings. I think it's also something that in the world of the many green claims we're seeing, with sustainability initiatives and different claims that are coming out from various companies and organizations, it's something that the average person can easily understand. Oh, wow, this company's doing a great job. They're not putting any waste into landfill. I think that, like when you see the Subaru commercial, obviously the people that are developing the marketing and the messaging there for that company, the advertisers, they're really focused on trying to appeal to a certain group of people that would really connect with that. But it is something that the average person can easily understand and can develop some type of maybe loyalty or interest in a company that they are making strides to do that. We also know that there are some supply chain requirements and regulations, and I'm going to talk about each of these in a minute. And this is just an example on this slide. You can see here, this is an excerpt out of a recent article from about Procter & Gamble, and basically, sending zero consumer or manufacturing waste to landfills is one of Procter & Gamble's major sustainability goals. So, that's evidence for sure that the sustainability program is driving them. And then we've all heard of this small company called Walmart, and very interesting that they have basically three primary goals. One of them is to basically create zero waste to landfill by 2025. So that's pretty big for them. It's giant organization, and just think about the supply chain and the number of stores they have. In fact, when I was at EPA, we had started working with Walmart probably in the early 2000s, before they really were on the sustainability bandwagon and really making major commitments like they do now. And we had learned then that they were one of the largest recyclers of waste and had done a really great job of converting a lot of materials from landfill at the time. We were actually working with them to try to help them push their suppliers to reduce waste and actually to reduce certain materials and chemicals that were being put into various products. So they had made some really great strides, and it's good to see that an organization like this, which is in everybody's lives, whether you see them on TV, you drive by one of their trucks, their stores are everywhere. They do have a lot of influence. So companies like this do have a big role in spreading the message of improving the way we manage materials and the way we make our society more sustainable. The other thing that's really interesting, back in 2010, if you look here, Walmart sent out a questionnaire of 15 questions to all their suppliers, roughly 100,000 of them, and they basically forced them to really think about sustainability and how they, as an organization, suppliers, were going to address certain issues. And you notice here questions 1 and 2 under material efficiency specifically ask questions about if they measure and report the total amount of solid waste generated from their facilities, and if they had set publicly available solid waste reduction targets. So basically that was a huge opportunity to raise awareness among suppliers that aren't in the United States. A lot of products are made overseas with Walmart. So the supply chain is definitely having an influence on getting companies to be more interested in this. And I also think consumers are starting to drive it as well. And really, I don't even like using that word because I don't feel like I'm a consumer, I'm a person. But that's the lingo we hear in the market quite often. Another big one is cost savings, and my mantra has always been waste equals lost profit. And if you're not putting the raw materials or everything you bring into your factory out in the product you're selling, and you're basically losing money. And we strongly endorse the use of source reduction techniques in manufacturing, to find opportunities to eliminate waste entirely. And I know for a fact, having worked in a lot of facilities over the years, that a lot of materials going to landfill have significant value. A lot of times it's product that could be sold and basically a lost revenue. And just the savings from the disposal and tipping fees, could be significant. I remember years ago working at a plant that made insulation products, and they were paying over $1 million a year just in disposal and tipping fees. So not a small sum. Another thing that's driving the market is definitely regulations, and for liability reasons. Having worked in EPA, I know that there was a lot of companies that got tied up as potentially responsible parties and Superfund and different things like that. Just recently, we were on the phone with a customer of ours who was very interested in getting certified for zero waste landfill or with landfill diversion, and they told us a story how one of their management companies was basically claiming they were recycling a bunch of the materials they were providing to them, and then they found out that this company was actually illegally dumping them in some wetlands, and that company got busted, and their name was all over the materials, so it was not a good situation. Also, we know that legislation is driving elimination of electronic waste from the waste stream, and that's trickling back to every person and every organization, that they have to figure out what they're going to do with their electronic materials. Pennsylvania just passed a disposal ban in January 2013. That's my home state, so that's why I highlight that. But there's also 25 other states that have legislation mandating statewide e-waste recycling. So the next thing I really want to talk about is with this proliferation of organizations making claims about being landfill-free or zero waste to landfill, how are they doing that? How are they making those claims? Are they all following a similar standard? And I can tell you that there currently is no existing national standards on waste to landfill reductions or zero waste to landfill at this time. And I'm, being from a company that does auditing and certification work, I want nothing more than to see some type of a standard, because I have we really dislike when people greenwash. There's a lot of greenwashing going on in the marketplace right now. So it's important that standards get developed and that people follow them. I can tell you right now some of the current activity, ASTM International E60 group on sustainability. Our company is actually involved with that, and that group was formed in 2008. And they are working actively to develop sustainability standards that are going to be published and recognized internationally. Currently in progress is something we're working actively on. We're focused on, number one, defining what is waste generated at manufacturing facilities, and also developing standards around claims around waste diversion from these manufacturing facilities. I also know that there's some activity right now with American National Standards Institute, ANSI, and they are in process of developing a waste diversion landfill-free standard. I know the folks from Zero Waste International Alliance are involved with that, and others, and we're actively pursuing an opportunity to get involved with that also. I'd like to bring our background to the table here and really help drive this in a manner. And in a few minutes, you're going to see that landfill-free is not really cut and dry and straightforward, and every organization is going to be different. So having a standard that works for all is going to be really important. There's the current activity that we're involved with. I did mention the ASTM E60 committee, and Green Circle certified right now. We are providing third-party analysis and certification of waste diversion from landfill, for claims for landfill-free, serving on that ASTM E60 committee that I mentioned, as well as we're now a founding member of the Sustainable Purchasing Council. And that I'm really excited about that organization, because they're working with a number of organizations, both large purchasers, manufacturers, government organizations, as well as getting connected with folks like the Sustainability Consortium to develop standards around what is and what is not a sustainable product or service. So we're going to basically be working over the next, probably year or two here to develop some specific standards around that and a system of measuring and identifying sustainable products and services. So companies with large purchasing departments or organizations like GSA can definitely understand, what is and what is not a sustainable product. I also really want to recognize the work of the U.S. Zero Waste Business Council and Zero Waste International Alliance. They've done some great work on developing zero waste definitions and principles for zero waste for businesses and communities. And this information you see right here, they just rolled out earlier this year. We're going to be talking a lot about the waste management hierarchy, and I do want to give these guys credit because they're really pushing the envelope on, trying to change the whole concept of waste and really working in a direction to go well beyond our current system of waste management, materials management. Bringing to the forefront the need for source reduction, redesign of products, more sustainable design, and different things like that. So, definitely important to follow them, and I'm looking forward to working with them as we move forward on developing more national standards. So the message I want to leave with all of you is there is a need for a comprehensive national standard that clearly defines how companies should measure and report zero waste to landfill claims. It's also important that, in my opinion, that whatever standards developed requires some type of third-party validation and certification. A lot of companies are self-certify or make their own claims, and over the years, I've definitely looked into a lot of those claims, and a lot of times they're inaccurate or they make mistakes, they misinterpret different standards. So by having third parties evaluate and basically determine if these things are being done properly is really important. So let's talk about, over the next few minutes now, some material management strategies and definitely considerations for making landfill-free claims. And this is an area, like I said, very complex. You have to think about, draw a box around every facility and look at all the material flows, what goes in, what comes out, and how can things be done better. And these are actually what I consider acceptable means of diversion. And when, in Green Circle Certified, this is something that we focus on in our current waste diversion analysis. As you see here on the right, this is the waste management hierarchy as published by the Environmental Protection Agency. And obviously, this is the direction to go: source reduction and reuse, recycling and composting, energy recovery, treatment and disposal very last. It's totally unfortunate that this pyramid is actually in reverse in our society right now, and there's still a tremendous amount of valuable materials that end up in landfills that are burned, different things like that. So I'm really very focused on looking at organizations when we do our analysis of their waste and materials management, and focused on really pushing source reduction, looking at opportunities for reuse or redesigning products or processes to eliminate waste, processing and selling to third parties, maybe reuse in the same or different process. Some of the companies we work with actually take materials that are generated in one facility and they become a raw material in another facility. So they're able to eliminate that as a waste. Composting, definitely some great benefits there for organics management. Anaerobic digestion, I think there's a lot of opportunity there. We do have the ability as a society, the way we're set up right now, to basically turn our wastewater treatment plants and our existing landfills into energy factories. We can basically collect methane out of those processes and convert that over to some, either energy or raw materials or fuel for trucks. So important things to consider. And then waste to energy, definitely I look at that as a opportunity for minimizing waste to landfill. But I do qualify that the materials that go to waste to energy should either be, materials that aren't easily recyclable within the infrastructure that exists today, or are not economically recoverable materials. Definitely think that waste energy has great value, but I don't, really support incineration or landfilling of any type. So very, very complex things that we have to look at as we consider every different organization. Here's some graphics that are off the EPA website. It's a bit dated. It's about 3 years old, but that's typical of EPA. They typically take 2 to 3 years to get new information out. But you can see here that U.S. municipal solid waste landfill volumes have declined and are declining over time as we see more opportunities happening within the world of recycling, as you can see here in the green, waste to energy, and then also composting are increasing. We still generate a lot of waste in this country, and it's kind of sad. But the fact that we are seeing more diversion, that's really great. So if we look at 2010 data, we're roughly looking about that municipal solid waste has fallen to 54%, which is down from 70% in 1990. And another interesting thing is our recycling rate across the United States is only at 34%. So there's still huge opportunity. Even if you think about some particular waste streams like plastic water bottles or soda bottles, billions of them generated, but only 28% recycling rate for PET. I know there's a lot of initiatives underway, with the various bottling companies and whatnot, but still tons of room for improvement there. So when we talk about source reduction, I just want to make sure we're all clear. Source reduction is basically eliminating waste at the source. Don't even generate the waste in the first place, and that comes through various means. It could be through engineering design, product design. It could be through preventative maintenance, good housekeeping practices, various different methods to do that. And when we think about it, it's definitely through increased efficiency and use of raw materials. We recently were at a facility doing a waste analysis for them, and they were basically disposing of about 8% of the raw material that came into the plant as scrap, and that represented roughly $6 million worth of raw material value. It didn't even include the value of the product. So, even today, there's still a lot of inefficiency out there and a lot of room for improvement with these different organizations. Packaging is another big one. We're starting to see a lot of movement among different organizations on reducing packaging. So definitely good movement in that area. Another important area is organics management. It's a large piece of the pie when we think about the amount of materials going to landfill or for disposal. And the EPA actually has this new program out on the EPA Food Recovery Challenge, and a lot of activity around that. The agency does a great job. They usually pick areas of importance and they focus on. Back when I was at the agency, we were focused on persistent bioaccumulative and toxic chemicals in waste, and really trying to drive those down. And now there's a major initiative on organics. And the great thing about the food hierarchy is, it really definitely looks at the most preferred to least preferred, as we typically see. But through source reduction, feeding hungry people, feeding animals, using food products for industrial material or industrial uses, or composting with landfill and incineration at the very bottom, gives a lot of choices for somebody who's managing organics. And there's a lot of things to consider. It's not just the food that's lost, but it's also all the costs. If you think about a typical restaurant or even a grocery store, the amount of materials that they bring into that facility that they paid for that end up going out and becoming a waste, there's a lot of value to that. Same thing with the cost of labor, especially for food preparation or a grocery store that has people that are managing the produce section. The cost of the disposal of the discarded food, taking up landfill space, contributing to greenhouse gases, a lot of things that must be considered in organics. We've been to quite a few composting facilities now. As this continues to grow, the infrastructure is getting much better for organics management, and great way to manage organics. A lot of people are anti composting, though, especially if they live close by. If you've ever been to a composting facility, the odor coming out of them can be pretty serious if they're not managed well. But one thing we have to think about, when a company's making the zero waste landfill claim and they are using organics management of, whether it's composting or anaerobic digestion or whatever, what about all the contaminants? I can guarantee that, we all know that people basically don't put all the things in the right bins when you're doing composting or you're doing food collection at a facility. And, you're going to have plastics in there and other things that can't be composted. So you got to ask the question, what does that composting facility do with that material? Are they putting it in a landfill? Are they throwing that into going to waste energy? And you also have to think about what are the boundaries. When a company makes a zero waste landfill claim, where does their responsibility stop? Is it when the hauler or the management company takes it away, or do we have to follow it all through the waste stream? Different things to consider. I mentioned earlier the EPA Food Recovery Challenge, and you can see there's a lot of organizations that are involved in that. Again, that's really good for raising awareness and driving reductions of organic materials, especially in large venues like with the Philadelphia Eagles or Unilever. Different groups like that, Harvard University, all have committed to doing things like this. Another, I mentioned earlier, anaerobic digestion. I think wastewater treatment plants, having worked in them quite a few times, always good opportunity there for managing sludge and reducing the volumes of sludge, but food waste and other organics can also be put into anaerobic digestion. Years ago, we did work at a pharmaceutical facility that generated a significant amount of organics, and we actively worked with them while we were at EPA to come up with solutions to turn that material into fuel, some type of energy source, and then basically use the solids that were left over for agricultural uses. And, a lot of opportunities in this realm. We can create electricity. We can use it as fuel for trucks. I know there's a lot of initiatives with several of the big waste management companies now that are collecting landfill gas and basically using that to fuel their vehicles. I know Procter & Gamble just recently went off purchasing fossil fuels because they're in the Marcellus Shale up in northeastern Pennsylvania, and they're basically fueling all their trucks there with natural gas. We also have the opportunity to use these materials for chemical additives or as feedstock for different products. Recycling material reuse, excellent process, getting more developed. National recycling rate in the 30 percentile range. Definitely great things happening, and again, heavily driven by economics in the markets. Waste recovery and reuse in manufacturing, a big opportunity, a lot of things going on there. I'm really a firm believer in the need for us as a society to develop a circular economy for all materials and products. They all have value, and recycling's good as long as products can be recycled back into themselves. But we still have not perfected that in any way, and there's still a lot of room there. Another question, for people that are claiming zero or landfill free, what about the contaminants in the recycling stream? How are they managed? I can guarantee for all of you that are on the phone that are in the waste management industry or even in the regulatory industry, you go to any MRF or any recycling facility and there's guaranteed to be materials that are not recyclable, mixed plastics that aren't easily recyclable, anything, beyond the ones and twos that are easily and usually collected, how are they managed? Are they basically going to landfill? Again, where does the boundary start or stop for the generator? And I think it's really important also to seriously look at the management companies. If someone's making a landfill-free claim, I think it's important to audit and verify that the management companies are really doing what they say they're doing with the products. I mentioned that example earlier where this particular organization is now going to deal with cleaning up a mess of somebody that was, they trusted and was not doing what they said they were supposed to do. So let's talk briefly now about electronics. Every organization, I don't care if it's your home or a large manufacturing facility, office building, whatever, electronics are going to be something that are prolific in our society right now. Think about how many phones you've gone through over the last few years. And, this picture here basically illustrates the evolution of the cell phones. And we're at a point now where we went from those really ugly giant handheld or old bag car phones only a few years ago, it seems like, to the point now where you've got something right out of the Jetsons where you can basically talk to your kids on, FaceTime, or you can text and get your email and check the weather and stocks. So really great technology advances, but it's also created a huge, huge issue. And we do know that e-waste is a problem because of rapid technology advancements, like I just illustrated, increasing consumer purchases. If you think about it, we're all part of the affluent middle class right now, but in developing countries, there's another 3 billion people that all want to live like us. And you have to really ask the question, how do we give iPhones, iPods, laptops, to another 3 billion people? So e-waste definitely fast growing, being banned from landfills. And e-waste management is really difficult. I can tell you, they're very complex materials to manage. They're not easily recyclable. I talk in my classes when I teach about advanced life cycle assessment and sustainable product design. We talk about all the time how these electronics aren't designed for disassembly or improvement. There's several companies out there that manage electronics that have landfill-free claims, and you really got to take a hard look at that, because I can tell you, with all the mixed materials and plastics that they have to manage, how are they managing them? I see this industry as gigantic opportunity for not only sustainable product design, but the circular economy for this sector. There's very valuable raw materials in these phones and computers, tantalum, niobium, different things like that are rare earth elements that are limited supply, and they're basically being wasted and mixed and not easily recoverable. Waste to energy, we do know that this is the conversion of my definition, non-recyclable, not economically recoverable materials into heat, electricity, or fuel using various processes. Got to ask the question though, if you look at the laws of thermodynamics, there is no way. So we can convert waste to a smaller volume, but we still have ash to manage. And how is it managed? Got to ask that question when you're evaluating these zero waste and landfill-free claims. There are a number of companies now that are developing waste from fuel, or fuels from waste, and basically what they're doing is taking these materials, pelletizing them, and then turning them into materials that can basically go into a waste to energy facility, or can be burned in an industrial boiler, or it can be used as a replacement for coal. I think that's really excellent, and we're seeing some great advances there. But again, another question, are these typically non-recyclable and not economically recoverable materials? If we're going to go to a circular economy, we want to only be burning stuff that we really can't recover at this point in time, until we develop better technology and a better system to manage. And when we look at different management options, if you remember the waste hierarchy, as you go down, waste to energy is just above landfill. And there's some reasons for that. First of all, waste to energy allows for recovery of energy value of all the waste, as well as any metals or materials that don't get combusted. Visited quite a few waste to energy plants, and it's great to see when these materials are being burned and electricity is coming out the back end of the plant, but it's still not the best use of raw materials and resources. Based on LCA data, there are less greenhouse gases than landfilling, especially when you consider the fact that landfills create methane over time, and if that methane is not properly managed, methane has 21 times the global warming potential of CO2. So you can see, there's definitely things to consider. Big reductions in waste volume, 80 to 90% with waste to energy. However, if you look at a landfill, roughly 100% of all those resources are being stored for the long term. And again, there is no way, because they don't really break down, or very little decomposition. And then you can also look at ash coming out of the waste energy. I mentioned earlier, what about that? What happens to it? Quite a few states basically regulate that ash as an alternate daily cover, so it's able to be used on existing landfills, basically as a replacement for topsoil. But again, something to consider and evaluate in every analysis. And typical landfills are using topsoil and other things. And one reason we started this waste diversion certification with the Green Circle is there were so many organizations out there that were taking materials that we saw and basically grinding them up and turning them into other sources of alternate daily cover. The C&D waste, construction and demolition waste, people are very good at that. And in fact, if you look at the LEED standards, many people are seeking to earn LEED points for reducing construction and demolition waste, whereas a lot of the management companies were taking that material and grinding it up and making alternate daily cover, so they're landfilling it anyway, and they're just using some loopholes in definitions to basically claim landfill free. The big question comes up when we get into hazardous and other wastes. How are these wastes managed? Big questions. Are they typically accounted for in the landfill-free claim? If you look at what P&G and Unilever are putting out, they basically do say that they work to eliminate those materials, and integrate those into their landfill-free claims. However, if there are regulations that require the disposal of these materials by a landfill, then they will basically not count that. And they do, if you look here at Procter & Gamble, they do have some limits on how much material, if it is a regulated material, can contribute to their landfill-free claim. And if they go over this greater than 1,000 kilograms per year, then they basically don't allow the landfill-free claim. Unilever publicly states that they do not include hazardous or non-hazardous waste within their accounting for their landfill-free claims, and they are very public about it. So, to me, both of these organizations are being very transparent. They're at least telling you how they've made the determination, since there are no standards to follow. And these are the kind of things you have to look at and ask questions about. When you hear these different folks claiming this, you kind of wonder about like Subaru and some of the others that have made the claims. How are they managing their hazardous waste? So I'm getting near the end here, and we'll be taking questions shortly. But I really want to point out again the importance of verification and auditing of diversion of waste from landfill. There is a major need to validate and audit companies' claims to divert waste materials because, again, very complex. Not every organization is the same. It's really hard, to just kind of lump all these people into one size fits all. And you have to follow the materials. I mean, is the management company really diverting all materials? When we do our analysis for a waste-free or waste diversion or landfill-free claim, we not only audit the company and understand their materials and their flows, we also audit at their management companies and determine what's happening to that material. And we will ask the hard questions. All right, what are you doing with the contaminants in the composting facility? What are you doing with the contaminants in recycling? How do you manage your ash and waste energy? So all good stuff. There is definitely value to third-party certifications. Many of you may have heard that the Federal Trade Commission now has just updated their green guides in late 2012. And I'm really excited about that because for years we've all been exposed to greenwashing and lies by many manufacturers and different organizations that bend the truth and basically put the spin on various things. You've all heard of things that are environmentally friendly or good for the environment. You've seen those kind of claims, and those are very nebulous. So the green guides really have established strict requirements and enforcement guidelines for environmental product claims. FTC is definitely stepping up enforcement. The Federal Trade Commission at this time does not have any specific green guides or requirements around landfill-free claims, but I can imagine based on the proliferation of these that we will see that being captured in future analysis by the Federal Trade Commission. Recently, Amazon, Macy's, Sears just had a major issue with the Federal Trade Commission over a claim that they were selling clothing or socks made out of bamboo when they were really made out of rayon, and they all paid a fine of about $1.2 million each for making those false claims. So that's just an example of what's happening in the market. And part of our work with Green Circle is to really try to minimize the risk for companies, with FTC now enforcing things. Another important aspect is, consumers, actually people who buy things, are really interested in learning more about the sustainability of the products and the companies. And based on this recent research by Cone, I actually was just out at the Sustainable Brands Conference out in San Diego, and Cone had some updated data, but roughly 54% of respondents believe eco-labels are effective in helping bring changes to environmental social problems. So the work of folks like the Zero Waste Alliance, definitely redefining what is waste and basically trying to change the management system here in the United States, excellent. But also we have to look at what's going on with consumers in their trust of eco-labels. And based on this analysis, roughly 44% of consumers do have a higher level of trust of brands that use eco-labels that aren't, companies that aren't doing self-proclaimed certifications is really important. So when we think about the value of third-party certification, transparency, huge, a lot of activity around that right now. A rigorous evaluation process is really important to ensure organization claims are valid based on the latest standards or industry practices. Third-party certification also provides independent third-party verification that claim is factual and accurate. Most of the companies that do hire us to do their analysis and certification want to make sure that they're not misinterpreting things, and they want a third party to evaluate their system. And that really reduces risk for future FTC enforcement as well as accusations of greenwashing. We are in a world now where, with the internet age and the ability for people to communicate really easily, someone can easily be offended by something a company does, and that could go out on Twitter, Facebook, out on the internet, and be spread like wildfire, and a company's brand and reputation can be damaged really quickly. So, the consumers are getting a lot smarter. People, the young folks, the millennials right now, are really smart. A lot of them are really into sustainability and looking for companies that support that. So this is just a little bit about the waste diversion certification. With this, like I said, with this increasing demand, Green Circle has developed a certification for not only zero waste to landfill, but we do evaluate diversion rates. So if a company has basically not achieved zero, but they do have a percentage they've diverted from landfill, we will evaluate and certify that. One more thing I wanted to point out, since I have a big audience here, I just wanted to announce that the Sustainable Biodiesel Alliance has just basically developed a standard, and we were actually selected by them to be their third-party certifier and auditor for this new certification system that they've developed for biodiesel. And if you think about it, there are a lot of waste materials that are converted into fuel, and waste oils, greases, fats coming out of wastewater plants, all those can be converted into biodiesel. And this was actually just announced a week ago up in New York City at an event with Willie Nelson, who is an honorary board member of the SBA. And we are in the pilot process right now, and we're going to be running through pilot on several certs with some producers, end users, and distributors of biodiesel to test the system. And again, since I have a great audience here of people that are interested in this, I just want to announce it and let people know that it is available. And if anyone would be interested, if you're using biodiesel in your fleets, or you have an interest in this, just you can reach out to the Sustainable Biodiesel Alliance or Green Circle to get more information. So with that, Wayne, I think we're at a point where we can start to take questions. I covered a lot of material here. It looks like we've got about 25 minutes or so for questions. So if you wanted to let me know what questions are, I'll be glad to address them.
Okay, thank you, Tad. Excellent presentation, very comprehensive. We're now going to field some questions from our presenter. Again, if you have any questions, please enter them in the Go to Webinar dialog box. And we do have a few on already, and I'll start with the first one here. Where does UL Environment Zero Waste Standard fit into this discussion?
Well, UL Environment is another certification body that's developed a standard, and they are in process right now of working to get ANSI verification of that standard. Again, any kind of ANSI process needs to be open to many stakeholders and get a lot of input, and there hasn't been much publicized on that. I know I've talked to several individuals that are involved in that, and I think it is important that that process be opened up publicly and get more input from folks that are in this field and have the expertise to really consider this, because as you all saw, this is a very complex matter. So yeah, ULE definitely out there working on that, and our goal within Green Circle, we've been working on the ASTM E60 committee to help develop standards. We're very interested in being involved in that ANSI process along with organizations like ULE.
Okay. Next question is, do you know if the EPA will be coming out with a definition of zero waste soon? They solicited input in 2011 on their MSW characterization study and got the most comments from the public suggesting that they adopt the ZWIA definition of zero waste to end the confusion in the marketplace.
Well, From my discussions with the people I know in the Office of Solid Waste, anything within that agency takes a long time. And my understanding is that is being evaluated, and that's the answer they typically give. But I do not know the status of where they are with that at that point. Definitely be interested in reaching out to some of my contacts there and determine where that's going.
Given that technologies continue to evolve, what is a non-recyclable today may be reused, recycled, composted, digested, or redesigned in the future? So should we not commit to long-term put-or-pay contracts to feed waste-to-energy facilities?
Well, I don't know that that's a pretty complex issue in itself. And, I know technology is rapidly changing, but if you look at the fact that a lot of it, we have an infrastructure that's established in the United States. We still have a lot of materials that are not manageable in that infrastructure or not driven by economics. So I wouldn't say that there's a need to end those contracts at this point. I think what we have to do is work within the system that we have and drive change as technology allows and at the pace of industry. Also, I think that various folks within manufacturing organizations, you're going to see more of this coming down from companies like Procter & Gamble or Unilever that are really committed to this and have these major commitments where I think you're going to see these things being driven. When it comes to the masses, the municipal solid waste coming out of residential, again, there's a challenge there, huge need to educate people, really a major need to change the system because people aren't going to really change their habits unless they're forced. That's an unfortunate fact. So, again, I don't really have a clear answer on that, but I think it's part of the discussion as we develop national standards and we redesign our system.
Do you know of any other organizations doing third-party certification of landfill-free and zero-waste claims?
Yeah, I do believe that the folks at Zero Waste are doing some of that. They actually have certified a few facilities. I think they were Whole Foods Markets. I know NSF has just rolled out their certification. So there's a few organizations out there. They're all relatively new. I know that ours rolled out in March. It took us about a year to develop, do the research and develop how we wanted to approach this. And again, I think there is a need. We don't want to have everybody developing their own thing. I think there's a need to develop a national standard that is recognized by a multi-stakeholder group.
This attendee has a concern about textiles and why they are not taken into consideration when talking about recyclable materials.
Yeah, well, like I said, I made my list there of typical waste, and textiles are really significant concern. I mean, just look in your own closet when you go home of all the clothing you have or your family has, and think about those materials. And there really isn't a great infrastructure for recycling them. I think the best thing that people are doing is goodwill and reuse and sending them off to third world countries and developing countries where they're needed. But it is something that's important. My focus today was mainly thinking about manufacturing, but even manufacturing facilities are going to have cloth and rags and different things that come out. So again, a lot of those end up going to laundries and recycling. So those are some alternatives there. But it is an issue, and if you do a life cycle assessment of just cotton, I mean, the impacts of growing cotton and making clothing out of cotton are very large. They're up there in the realm of virgin aluminum. So important to consider that. And again, I couldn't didn't cover every waste stream, but everything has to be considered.
U.S. Zero Waste Business Council is also developing a zero waste standard between this, yours, and the UL. How do we know which one will be the best for us/clients?
Well, I think what we need is a standard that's basically recognized by ANSI or ASTM or ISO, and just like we all follow the ISO standards right now. Those are really well developed. There's a lot of great American national standards out there, ASTM standards. It will be hard to say, and I think we'll have to see how this evolves. And again, getting the right stakeholder group to develop those standards is going to be really important. Opening it up in a transparent manner for the development of the standards, so there's proper public input and also a diverse group of people evaluating them will be the key to developing the best standard.
Do the ANSI or ASTM standards include guidance about density factors to use to convert from waste volumes to weights in the cases where companies only have service level data?
Well, that's a big problem, I'm going to tell you right now, because not every company is doing that the same way. If we look at, for example, a single stream container of recyclables, some companies might put that at, say, 75 pounds per yard, whereas others say it's only 30 or 40. It's going to depend on the volumes. If you look at any single stream recycling container, there's usually a lot of cardboard, there's a lot of air, and it's really hard to say. But I do think there is a need for that because until the industry, and I've been talking to the folks in these waste management facilities and organizations for years about the need to actively be able to measure every load that they pick up. I know a lot of them are working on it, but till we can get real data, there's going to be a lot of estimating. And even if you look at like carbon footprinting, there's carbon factors that are used and recognized by EPA and other industry. I think there is going to be a need for volume conversion numbers, especially when there's no way to effectively weigh every load or estimate it in a proper way. In fact, when we do our analysis, we look at that closely because we've seen some companies that skew the numbers to make the diversion rates higher. The management companies do, and they'll use really high numbers for those single stream containers and things. And to us, that's unacceptable.
As we wait for a national standard, what are the first steps that a company should take to move down the path to zero waste?
Well, I would say, like I said earlier, you really need to look at material flows in the facility, really understand those flows, and then work towards reducing them at the source, redesigning, eliminating waste as much as possible, and then taking a hard look at the materials that you can't effectively do that to at this point. Maybe you're limited by technology or different things like that. So I think it's important to evaluate your operation, understand the materials, and then get educated on the management methods that you can utilize. There are going to be organizations that, basically their best choice beyond landfill is going to go to waste to energy, regardless of what they have. And, it's important to recognize that. And, that's one thing you have to think about, that not all facilities are created equal. So I think really inventorying, understanding, and then looking at what is available out there. There are some really good landfill-free waste management companies out there. The waste energy folks have done some good work over the years. So you really got to look at all your options and really try to find the best and most reputable management companies to work with is really important.
Your statement about major businesses driving zero waste, one of the drivers for them is that they want consumers to view them as acting in a sustainable manner. So won't it be important to have environmental organizations support whatever standards are developed to ensure they are not greenwashing?
Oh, absolutely. Even that I mentioned earlier, that standard that was developed for sustainable biodiesel. They had 45, 50 different people develop the baseline practices for that included NGOs, NRDC, different folks like that. So really important to have them involved. And that's why I'm saying that any ANSI development process has to be open with a lot of stakeholder input among diverse groups.
This question is concerning composting. Are there big differences between the states as far as compost licensing and regulations?
I can't proclaim to be an expert on that. The infrastructure is really being developed. So without doing some research, I can't effectively answer that. But I do know there are, for example, in Delaware, like in the Philadelphia area right now, Delaware tends to be very friendly to composting. They've got some great facilities down there. I know there's been some small operations developing around the Philadelphia area, and some of them had some major issues. So every state will be different, and we do realize when you look at organics, if you look at a natural system like a forest, basically all the materials that come out of a forest are basically composted, broken down, converted back into food, and that's really what we need to do with our organics. It's a huge issue, and we need to really push for more infrastructure. So I'm hopeful that EPA and the states can come together and really come up with a good solution for this. And the waste management companies, the folks that are dealing with these materials, they have a big role in this as well.
Okay, I think that's all the questions, and we're actually just about out of time. So again, this webinar, like all the webinars in this series, has been recorded and will be made available as a YouTube video. Links to these videos can be found on both the National Recycling Coalition and Recycling Market Center websites. Tad, thank you for that excellent presentation, and thank you, audience, for joining us. We hope you will join us next month for our webinar scheduled on Tuesday, July 16th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And have a great day.
All right, thank you.